The street behind the Azure Club glistened with rain, neon lights reflecting off wet pavement like broken promises. Victor Rice, Chicago's most feared mafia boss, stood beside his black Mercedes, jaw clenched, satellite phone pressed to his ear. Another territorial dispute, another crisis demanding his attention. But Vicky wasn't backing down this time. "I'm tired, Victor," she said, her voice cutting through the cold air like glass. "Tired of being invisible. Tired of being your trophy when convenient, and your burden when you're busy." Victor's patience snapped. He gestured dismissively toward the waiting car. "Get in." "No." That single word hung between them like a death sentence. Victor's eyes went cold, the same look that made grown men beg for mercy. "You want independence? Fine. Walk home, Vicky." She turned without a word, heels clicking against wet pavement, disappearing into the shadows of Chicago's most dangerous streets. A city full of men who hated Victor Rice, men who would pay fortunes to hurt him through her. The realization hit him like a bullet. He lunged for his car, but his phone buzzed. Marcus, his head of security. "Boss, we found something." Vicky's phone. "And there's blood everywhere. Hello, my beautiful family. Before we continue with this devastating story, I need to be honest with you. This video took hours to research, write, edit, and produce. Hours of work to bring you this incredible true story of redemption. If you appreciate the time, effort, and heart we pour into every single video, please hit that subscribe button. Let's continue." Victor's world collapsed in the time it took Marcus to speak those words. He arrived at 14th and Belmont within minutes, tires screeching, heart hammering against his ribs like a prisoner trying to escape. The street was already sealed off, unmarked black cars forming a perimeter, his men moving with grim efficiency. Marcus stood in the center, pale as death, holding up an evidence bag. Inside, Vicky's rose gold phone, screen shattered, the delicate floral charm she loved still dangling from the corner. 20 feet away, cordoned off by police tape, a dark pool glistened under the streetlights. Blood. Her blood. "They hit her fast, boss," Marcus reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Fresh tire marks show they dragged her into a vehicle. No witnesses. This wasn't random, this was planned." Victor stared at that phone, her lifeline, her connection to the world, and felt something inside him crack. This was the phone she used to text him goodnight when he worked late, the phone that held photos of their wedding day, when her smile could light up entire rooms. Now it lay in a pool of her blood because of his pride. "This is my fault," Victor whispered, the words tasting like ash. "I told her to walk home. I put her out there." Within the hour, Victor transformed from mafia boss to avenging angel. Every resource, every informant, every connection activated simultaneously. The collection stopped. The territorial disputes became meaningless. His entire criminal empire pivoted to one singular mission: find Vicky Rice. He knew who was behind this. Silas Petrova, a rival boss who'd been circling Victor's West Side territory like a shark for months. Silas played dirty, everyone knew that. But targeting family? That crossed every line in their brutal world. Victor stormed into his command center, a soundproof room in his penthouse, where Marcus coordinated security operations. Screens flickered with surveillance feeds, maps of Chicago sectioned into color-coded territories, real-time updates from street informants. "I want Silas's entire operation mapped," Victor commanded, his voice deadly calm. "His warehouses, his homes, his mother's favorite restaurant. I want to know where he buys his coffee. And I want it in 2 hours." Marcus hesitated. "Boss, if we move too fast, if we spook him, then I'll burn this city to the ground until someone talks." Victor slammed his fist against the desk, the wood splintering. "She's out there, Marcus. Bleeding, terrified, because I was too proud to drive her home myself." His men scattered, phones buzzing, the underground network activating with the urgency of war. But as Victor stood alone in that room, surrounded by monitors showing his crumbling empire, one thought consumed him. Power meant nothing if he couldn't protect the one person who made him feel human. Victor's mind wouldn't stop replaying that conversation. Not the one tonight, the one from 6 months ago. They'd been in this same command center. Vicky had come downstairs, unable to sleep, finding him hunched over surveillance footage at 3 a.m. She'd stood in the doorway wearing his old college sweatshirt, looking vulnerable and exhausted. "Victor, your empire is built on sand," she'd said quietly. "When the tide comes in, it won't wash away your gold, it'll wash away us. I'm terrified your life is going to destroy mine." He'd dismissed her, called her dramatic, sheltered, unable to understand the complexities of his world. He'd told her to go back to bed, that he was handling things. Now, staring at the evidence bag containing her blood-stained phone, those words felt like prophecy. Marcus cleared his throat. "Boss, we intercepted a message." Victor's head snapped up. "Show me." The decoded text appeared on screen, and Victor's blood turned to ice. "Package secured." Boss's pretty wife wasn't so tough without her protection. Waiting for instructions. It was signed with Silas's signature emoji, a snake. Victor's fists clenched until his knuckles cracked. He took her to prove a point. "To show me I'm vulnerable. There's more," Marcus said carefully. "Our informant inside Silas's crew says he's not asking for money. He wants something bigger. What could be bigger than money to that snake? Your reputation, boss. He wants you to bleed in public. He wants every other crew in Chicago to see the great Victor Rice brought to his knees." The truth hit Victor like a freight train. This wasn't about territory or cash. This was about breaking him. About proving that even the king could be dethroned if you knew where to strike. And Victor had painted the target on Vicky's back himself, every time he'd dismissed her fears. Every time he'd told her she was overreacting. Every time he'd chosen his phone over her presence at dinner. He'd been systematically removing her protection, while convincing himself he was keeping her safe. "I did this," Victor said, his voice hollow. "Not just tonight, every day for years. I made her invisible, so everyone else stopped seeing her as untouchable. I normalized her absence from my life, until someone realized she was my weakness, not my strength." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, we need to focus." "No." Victor's eyes cleared, filled with terrifying resolve. "You need to understand what I'm about to do. Find me every informant who has access to Silas. I don't care what it costs. I don't care what I have to give up. My wife is coming home, even if I have to dismantle everything I've built to make it happen." For the first time in 20 years, Victor Rice wasn't thinking like a boss. He was thinking like a husband who'd finally realized what truly mattered. The informant's name was Sal, a nervous, sweating weasel of a man who'd been playing both sides for years. Victor met him in a deserted warehouse on the industrial edge of the city, the kind of place where conversations ended with bodies in the river. But tonight, Victor wasn't there to threaten. He was there to negotiate. Sal practically vibrated with fear as Victor approached, flanked only by Marcus. "B-Boss Rice, I heard about your wife. Terrible business, really terrible. Where is she?" Victor's voice was flat, devoid of the usual menace. Somehow that made it more terrifying. Sal swallowed hard. "Silas has her in the old meatpacking plant by the river." "But boss, he's not asking for money. He wants—" "What does he want, Sal?" "The West Side. All of it. He wants you to publicly announce you're stepping down from operations, handing over your territory, giving him your financial ledgers. He wants—" Sal's voice dropped to a whisper. "He wants you to look weak, boss. He wants every crew in Chicago to see Victor Rice broken." The West Side represented 15 years of Victor's life, millions in revenue, the backbone of his entire operation. It was the territory that made him untouchable, that funded his legitimate businesses, that kept 50 families employed. Giving it up would signal vulnerability. Every rival in the city would circle like sharks, sensing blood in the water. It could unravel everything. Victor didn't hesitate. "Done." Sal's mouth fell open. "Boss, did you hear what I heard you perfectly. Silas gets the West Side, the books, the whole operation, but I get 2 things in return. My wife, untouched and unharmed, and Silas himself, alone in that plant. No guards, no weapons, just him and me." "Boss, that's suicide. Silas won't honor." Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Then make him honor it, Sal. Because if my wife has one more bruise than she already has, If she's hurt in any way because you failed to negotiate properly, I will dismantle your entire family tree. Your mother, your brother in Cleveland, that cousin you hide in the suburbs, I will erase everyone you've ever loved. Do you understand? Sal nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. Good. Tell Silas he wins. Tell him Victor Rice chooses his wife over his crown. Set up the exchange for tomorrow night at midnight. Victor turned to leave, then paused. And Sal? Start recording everything Silas says. I'm getting out of the life, but I'm making sure he never touches another family member in this city again. As they walked back to the car, Marcus finally spoke. Boss, the West Side is worth $40 million a year. You're just giving it away? Victor looked at his most trusted advisor, and for the first time in their decade-long relationship, Marcus saw tears in Victor's eyes. What's it worth if she's dead, Marcus? What's any of it worth if I lose the only person who ever made me feel like more than a monster? Marcus had no answer, because there wasn't one. Midnight at the old meatpacking plant felt like stepping into hell. The building loomed against the Chicago skyline, rusted metal and broken windows, the stench of decay and river water thick in the air. Victor arrived alone as promised, armed with only a single suppressed handgun and the weight of his guilt. True to his word, he'd already sent the coded message through the underground network. Victor Rice was withdrawing from West Side operations. The news had spread like wildfire, his empire already fracturing as rivals positioned themselves to fill the vacuum. He didn't care. Not anymore. Victor pushed through the rusted door, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Emergency lights cast sickly yellow pools across concrete floors, stained with decades of blood, animal and otherwise. Then he saw her. Vicky sat bound to a chair in the center of the room, her silk dress torn, face bruised, one eye swollen shut. But her remaining eye locked onto his, and even through the pain and fear, he saw something that broke him. Resignation. She'd expected this. Expected him to fail her. Well. Silas emerged from the shadows, flanked by 4 armed men despite their agreement. The Lion of Chicago comes crawling for his pretty pet. Victor ignored him, his entire focus on Vicky. Are you hurt? Did they? Oh, we've been very careful with her, Victor. Silas circled the chair like a predator. She's worth more to you intact, though I must say, she's been quite vocal about what a terrible husband you are. How you abandoned her, neglected her, made her feel worthless. She was right about all of it, Victor said quietly. Release her, Silas. You got the territory. You won. Won? Silas laughed, the sound echoing off metal beams. No, Victor. Winning is watching you realize you traded your entire empire for a woman who probably doesn't even want you anymore. Winning is... He raised his hand to strike Vicky. Victor moved. Years of violence, of survival, of protecting territory, it all condensed into a single moment of pure, desperate fury. Not the calculated violence of a mob boss, but the primal rage of a man protecting his family. The suppressed gunshot was a whisper. Silas's guard dropped before anyone processed the movement. Victor was already moving, disarming the second guard, using him as a shield against the third. The fight was brutal, bloody, efficient, but when he reached Silas, Victor didn't go for the kill shot. Instead, he beat the man methodically, every blow fueled by months of guilt and self-hatred. This wasn't about power, it was about penance. You touched my wife, Victor growled, pinning Silas to the concrete. You hurt her because I made her vulnerable. But here's your lesson, Silas. I'm not that man anymore. Get out of my city. If I ever see you near Chicago again, if you ever speak her name, the next time I won't spare your life. He left Silas broken but breathing a message to himself as much as to his enemy. The old Victor would have killed him. The man trying to earn redemption walked away. Victor rushed to Vicky, hands shaking as he untied her. I'm sorry. God, Vicky, I'm so sorry. She collapsed into him, sobbing. But when he tried to pull her closer, she stopped him, hand flat against his chest. Her eyes swollen, exhausted, traumatized, met his. You did this, Victor, she whispered. You're saving me now, but you put the target on my back. I need a hospital, and then I need space. Victor's heart shattered, but he nodded. Because she was absolutely right. He helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they walked into the night. His ribs were cracked, his face bloodied, his empire crumbling, but she was breathing, and that was all that mattered. The private hospital suite was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors. Victor sat in the waiting room for 7 straight days, never leaving, never sleeping more than 30 minutes at a time. He looked like a ghost, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing the same blood-stained clothes until Marcus forcibly brought him fresh ones. The doctors said Vicky would physically recover. Bruised ribs, concussion, lacerations, severe shock. Her body would heal, but the look in her eyes when she finally woke that might never heal. Victor was allowed 5 minutes. He stood in the doorway like a supplicant, afraid to enter, afraid to contaminate her space with his presence. "Hey," he whispered. Vicky turned her head slowly, the movement clearly painful. When she saw him, something flickered across her face. Not love, not even relief, just exhaustion. "You came," she said, her voice hoarse. "I never left. I've been right outside, He stepped closer, hands trembling. "Victor." She cut him off, her tone flat. "Empty. I need you to leave." The words punched through him like bullets. "Vicky, please. I know You told me to walk home." Her voice cracked. "In a city full of men who hate you. You looked me in the eye and sent me into danger because your pride was more important than my safety. Do you understand what that feels like?" Victor's legs nearly gave out. He gripped the foot of her hospital bed to steady himself. "I understand. God, Vicky, I understand. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to. I can't do this right now." Tears streamed down her bruised cheeks. "I can't process your guilt while I'm still processing my trauma. I need you to go." "Okay." The word barely made it past the lump in his throat. "Okay, but Vicky, I'm not giving up. I'm not walking away. I'm going to prove to you that I can be the husband you deserved from the beginning." She turned away, facing the window, her silence more devastating than any words. Victor left. But he didn't go far. Vicky's younger sister, Cora, arrived that afternoon and found Victor in the waiting room. The slap she delivered echoed through the hallway. "You bastard," she hissed. "You arrogant, selfish bastard. You told her to walk home in the middle of the night in a city that wants you dead. She almost died because of your ego." Victor didn't defend himself. He simply absorbed her rage, knowing he deserved every word. "Fix yourself, Victor," Cora spat before returning to her sister's room. "Fix your soul before you ever try to fix this marriage. Because right now, you're not worthy of her." Victor slumped against the wall, Cora's words ringing in his ears. She was right, about all of it. So he began the longest, hardest journey of his life, becoming a man worthy of a second chance. Vicky didn't come home. When the hospital discharged her, she went to Cora's apartment across the city. She left Victor one note, delivered by Marcus. "I need 6 months. I need to see that the boss is truly gone and the husband is truly present. Don't contact me. Show me through your actions." 6 months. Victor honored her demand with monastic discipline. He moved out of the penthouse too many ghosts, too many reminders of the man he'd been. Instead, he rented a small, secure apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, nothing that spoke of power or wealth. Then he began dismantling his empire. The legitimate construction company he'd used as a front for years, that stayed, but now it operated cleanly. Union contracts, proper wages, transparent accounting. The illegal operations, the loan sharking, the protection rackets, the smuggling routes he systematically shut down or handed over to trusted associates with strict instructions, legitimize or get out. The transition cost him millions. His income dropped by 70% overnight. Former allies called him weak, retired, finished. Victor didn't care. Twice a week, he attended therapy. Dr. Chen was a no-nonsense psychologist who'd worked with former criminals before. She didn't coddle him. "You used power as a shield against vulnerability," she said during their 3rd session. "You confused control with safety. And when Vicky challenged that control, you reacted like a cornered animal. I destroyed the person I loved most. Victor said, his voice hollow. No, you neglected her for years, then endangered her in a moment of ego. But destroyed? That remains to be seen. The question is, can you rebuild both yourself and the trust you shattered? It was the most painful work of Victor's life, peeling back layers of emotional armor he'd built since childhood, confronting the scared boy who'd learned that showing weakness meant getting hurt, understanding that the same traits that made him a successful criminal, ruthlessness, emotional distance, singular focus, made him a terrible husband. He filled notebooks with reflections, attended support groups for people leaving violent lifestyles, started volunteering at a construction training program for at-risk youth, teaching them legitimate trades. He didn't call Vicky, didn't send gifts or flowers. He respected her boundary completely, proving through silence that he could prioritize her needs over his own desires. But he did write. Long letters he never sent, documenting his journey, his failures, his revelations, his commitment to change. He kept them in a box, hoping someday she'd want to read them. 4 months in, Marcus visited with a report on the construction business. Revenue's up 15%, boss. The clean operation is actually more profitable long-term. Clients trust us now. Victor smiled faintly. I'm not bosses anymore. Marcus, I'm just Victor. And maybe that's enough. The hardest part wasn't the money or the power he'd lost. It was waking up every morning in an empty apartment, knowing that the woman he loved was healing across the city, and the best thing he could do for her was stay away. But he stayed away, because for the first time in his life, Victor Rice was putting someone else's needs before his own. 5 months after that night, Vicky agreed to meet him. The location was her choice, a small cafe in Millennium Park, public and neutral. Victor arrived early, his stomach twisted in knots he'd never felt negotiating million-dollar deals. He looked different. Gone were the expensive tailored suits and gold watches. He wore simple dark jeans, a gray sweater, brown leather boots. He'd lost weight, the good kind, from regular exercise and proper sleep. His eyes, though still carrying shadows of guilt, were clearer, present. When Vicky arrived, Victor's breath caught. She was beautiful as always, but something had changed. She carried herself differently, stronger, more self-possessed, like someone who'd walked through fire and emerged forged rather than broken. Thank you for coming, Victor said, standing until she sat. Vicky studied him for a long moment. You look different. I am different. Or trying to be. He pushed a folder across the table. Bank statements for the construction company. Therapy records. Documentation of every illegal operation I've shut down. I'm not asking you to trust my words, Vicky. I'm asking you to trust my actions. She opened the folder, scanning the documents. Her eyebrows rose at the therapy frequency, twice weekly, never missed. The financial records showed massive losses from going legitimate. You gave up everything, she said quietly. No. I gave up a false version of power that almost cost me everything that actually mattered. Vicky closed the folder, her hands folded on top. When she finally looked up, her eyes were serious. I need to ask you something, Victor. And I need complete honesty, not the answer you think I want to hear. Anything. Why did you tell me to walk home that night? The question he'd been dreading and preparing for simultaneously. Victor took a slow breath, fighting every instinct to deflect or minimize. Because I was losing control, he said, his voice steady but raw. You were right about everything, the neglect, the emotional distance, how I treated you like property instead of a partner. And in that moment, when you stood up for yourself, you were stronger than me. I couldn't handle it. It was easier to be cruel and dismissive than to admit I was destroying the best part of my life. A tear rolled down Vicky's cheek. You almost got me killed because of your ego. I know. And I can't take that back. I can't undo the trauma or erase what happened. All I can do is promise you that I understand now power without accountability is just tyranny. Strength without vulnerability is just isolation. And I choose you, Vicky. Not because I'm desperate or guilty, but because you're the only person who ever made me want to be better. Vicky was quiet for a long moment. Then, if we do this, if we try again, we're equal partners, Victor. No more secrets. No more handling it alone. Everything we build together. Victor felt something break open in his chest. Not pain, but hope. You already have the keys to the castle, Vicky, he said softly. You always did. I'm just finally smart enough to admit it. She reached across the table and took his hand. It was the beginning. Victor had sold the penthouse within a week of leaving the hospital. Too many ghosts. Too much marble and steel that screamed dominance rather than intimacy. The new house was a revelation. A modest brownstone in a leafy neighborhood where families walked dogs and kids played street hockey. 3 bedrooms, a small garden, original hardwood floors that creaked with character. Most importantly, the deed was entirely in Vicky's name. I don't understand, she said when he showed her the paperwork. They were standing in the empty living room, late afternoon sun streaming through bay windows. It's your insurance policy, Victor explained. If I ever become that man again, if I ever prioritize power over you, if I ever make you feel unsafe, you leave, and you keep the house. Your name on this deed means you're never trapped. You always have options. Vicky stared at the document, then at Victor. You're giving me an exit strategy from our marriage? I'm giving you freedom. Real freedom, not the gilded cage version I convinced myself was protection. He stepped closer, careful not to invade her space. I want you to choose me every day, Vicky. Not because you're financially dependent or scared to leave, but because we're building something worth staying for. She kissed him, then soft and tentative. The first real kiss since that night. It tasted like forgiveness and possibility and home. They furnished the house together. No interior designers or expensive galleries. They spent Saturdays at estate sales and local furniture stores, debating paint colors and arguing good-naturedly over whether the bathroom needed a vintage mirror. One rainy afternoon, they were assembling a bookshelf. Victor's massive hands fumbled with the tiny Allen wrench, his face twisted in concentration. Vicky laughed, a bright, genuine sound that warmed the entire room. Here, Mr. Former Boss of Chicago. Let the architect handle precision tools. She took the wrench, efficiently tightening bolts while Victor held the frame steady. It was such a simple moment, domestic, mundane, perfect. I feel like I just got my life back, Victor said quietly, watching her work. You didn't get it back, Vicky corrected, meeting his eyes. You built a new one. There's a difference. They sealed their new beginning not with grand gestures or expensive jewelry, but with commitment to the daily work of being married. Therapy appointments became their non-negotiable date. They established rules. No phones during dinner, honest communication about fears and needs, regular check-ins about their emotional state. Victor started cooking badly at first, but with enthusiasm. Vicky taught him about her architectural work, and he listened with genuine interest instead of distracted tolerance. 3 months after moving in, they were having breakfast when Vicky said, I forgive you. Victor looked up, tears immediate in his eyes. Not because you've suffered enough, she continued, but because you've genuinely changed. And I'd rather build a future with the man you're becoming than stay angry at the man you were. Victor reached across the table, taking her hand. No words needed. They were home. Finally, truly home. My beautiful family, we're almost at the end of this incredible journey of redemption. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances and the power of real change, show your support by subscribing. Join our community of people who believe that anyone can transform if they're willing to do the hard work. Only those who don't believe in redemption and growth would watch this entire story and not become part of our family. Subscribe now. 20 months after the night that almost destroyed them, Victor woke to find Vicky missing from bed. Panic, his old companion, flared briefly before he heard movement in the bathroom. Some fears, he'd learned in therapy, never fully disappeared. They just became manageable. He found her standing at the sink, staring at something in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Vicky? He moved to her side, heart racing. What's wrong? She turned to him, and her expression stopped him cold. Not pain, not fear, joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. I'm pregnant, she whispered, holding up 2 positive pregnancy tests. Victor's knees buckled. He actually stumbled, catching himself on the doorframe. For all the violence he'd witnessed, all the life and death negotiations he'd navigated. Nothing had prepared him for this moment. The emotion hit him like a tidal wave: relief, gratitude, terror, hope, love, all crashing together until he couldn't breathe. He dropped to his knees, wrapping his arms around Vicky's waist, pressing his face against her stomach, and sobbed. "I don't deserve this," he choked out. "I don't deserve you. I don't deserve this second chance." "Yes, you do." Vicky knelt down to meet him, cradling his face in her hands. "You traded your crown for me, Victor. You gave up everything that almost killed me. You earned this." They held each other on the bathroom floor, crying and laughing, the morning light turning everything golden. The pregnancy became their shared project. Doctor's appointments attended together, nursery designed collaboratively, parenting books devoured and debated. Victor was present for every ultrasound, every decision, every moment of morning sickness and midnight craving. 7 months later, they stood together in the softly painted nursery, pale yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile of clouds and stars that Vicky had designed herself. Victor assembled the crib while Vicky sat in the rocking chair, hand on her swollen belly, watching him work. "You've gotten pretty good with that Allen wrench," she teased. Victor smiled, carefully fitting the last piece into place. "I had a good teacher." He stood back, surveying their work. The room was perfect, safe, warm, filled with love instead of luxury. Everything his childhood home hadn't been. Everything he'd almost destroyed. "She's going to be so safe here," Victor said, moving to kneel beside Vicky's chair. He placed his hand over hers on her belly, feeling their daughter kick. "So loved. I promise you both no shadows from my past will ever touch her." "I know," Vicky murmured, leaning into him, because she did know. Not because Victor had made grand promises or dramatic gestures, but because he'd proven it through 2 years of consistent, humble action. He'd chosen family over power, vulnerability over control, love over fear. That night, lying in bed with Vicky in his arms, their daughter moving between them, Victor finally understood true wealth. It wasn't the penthouse or the territory or the respect that came from fear. It was this, the quiet miracle of being trusted by someone he'd hurt. The gift of building something real and lasting. The chance to be better than his worst moment. He'd told Vicky to walk home, and in doing so, nearly lost everything. But she'd found her way back to him. And together, they'd found their way home to each other. That was the only empire worth building. That was redemption. Thank you for watching.